that note, may I humbly request our Honorable Chief Guest, Professor K. Vijayaraghavan, former Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India, to kindly grace the dais with his words of wisdom. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tripathi, Mr. Sharma, all of you here. It's a great honor to be here again and to see all the wonderful work which is going on and all the potential which young people, startups, entrepreneurs have. This is an area which you are experts on, and I don't have too much to add. And we heard from Tripathi ji about how the merging of science and technology and management and humanities can actually be transformative. So I'll try and focus a little bit on that. And I will just try to very briefly address 4 components. First, as all of you go into the world, what are the kinds of problems and challenges which we face today which need addressing? And your talent and expertise can address that. So first, what are the problems? Second, what role does science and technology have in enabling solutions to this problem? And as we heard from Tripathi ji, science and technology is not sufficient, it is necessary. So we need the third component, what are the solutions along with science and technology which we need to bring to solve these problems? So what are the problems, what are the technologies, what are the solutions? And finally, who are the solvers? That is you. How can you engage with the system? So these are the 4 simple points. First of all, the problems today are very different from the problems we would have defined 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, the attitude of humans was that ingenuity and our economic and technological capability can solve any problem which we face. Today, that is not the case. The previous attitude came upon from the start of the first industrial revolution, where the exploitation of natural resources, of human resources, of capital and markets resulted in an unbridled growth, which was also had in parallel what people call controlling nature. Nature was something to be controlled. The result of this unbridled growth were twofolds. One, there was extraordinary asymmetry in the growth. Growth and prosperity in some regions, in some countries, required the suppression of other countries, of the environment, of other economies, and so on. So there was extraordinary asymmetry amongst people because of this growth. But there was also an extraordinary damage to the planet as a whole. The order and beauty and the cleanliness and the prosperity in some locations was at the cost of the planet as a whole. Today we are no longer at that situation for 2 reasons. First, we've damaged the planet so much that we have to actually look after it and bring it back to a normal situation. We are the stewards of the planet. For example, 10,000 years ago, humans, our livestock and our pets was less than 1% of the entire vertebrate biomass. Today, humans, our livestock and our pets are 98% of the vertebrate biomass. So we have grown in size and scale in such a manner that we are no longer survivors on this planet. We hold the paintbrush which controls the canvas of the earth and what is painted on it. So we have a great responsibility. So that's one aspect. The other is business as usual. Extracting more and more from the earth is not a feasible option anymore because, as I said, that required societies to exploit other societies or exploit within for success. That exploitation is no longer tenable. The exploitation of natural resources in an unbridled manner or fossil fuel is no longer tenable. So how are we going to get the energy for sustainable development is a huge question, and that is the principal problem we have to solve. How can we prevent the damage to biodiversity, the environment, and still have sustainable development, because hundreds of millions of people need to be lifted out of poverty. They need energy, they need growth, they need opportunity, And how can we do this without exploiting each other and the environment? So that's the biggest global challenge. Of course, this challenge is complicated by the consequences of climate change, extreme weather events, pandemics which have taken place for a variety of reasons, and there'll be natural disasters of various. So it's a very difficult and complex world. Now, in many ways, technology, which was participant in this kind of change, has two sides to it. One, the exploitative kind, and depends who uses it and how. And the other is actually the solution. And the solution is also lies enormously in technology today because of some very interesting developments. Let us take a look at the mobile telephone. The earliest mobile telephones were developed about 20, 30, 40 years ago, and they were about this big, and there are photographs of someone carrying it around. The battery pack was huge and was in a suitcase, and people were very impressed that they could talk with satellite from one location to another. What is it that has changed the mobile phone into something which everyone has and which all of you are using even as we speak? There are extraordinary changes in electronics which took place, but there are some major changes which are very important. One is a change in the availability of energy to charge a phone everywhere, but importantly, the power transistor was an enormously great has undergone enormously great changes so that you can pack high density power into a small container and have a battery which is very small. So the early mobile phone chargers were big clunks of bricks. Now they are very, very small, and this is because of the power transistor revolution. This and the ability in robotics, you see all these robots going around motorizing devices, means that you can power in a much more efficient way, and this has actually dramatically changed the use of energy and the availability of power device in a very large scale. So these are the kinds of technological changes which have taken place. There are extraordinary changes taking place in terms of the way we source energy, solar, wind, various kinds of geothermal energy. Nuclear energy is undergoing a major revolution. Small nuclear power plants are going to be very important. So there are tools by which high power density can be brought into availability on a large scale. And therefore that being used for our growth is very, very important. So that's a very critical aspect. So these are the problems and these are the technological approaches one can take to solve them. And there, whether you're using drones or computer science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on, they are part of the solution. But that solution is not enough. People, economies, politics, society play a very critical role. Why should, for example, countries invest in science and technology? That's because we want to be solvers of our problems and because we understand our problems best. Otherwise, if we take a view that we can import the consequences of basic fundamental research from other countries and simply apply them over here, then we are importing black boxes with all the complexities inside which we don't understand, and we will become a plug-and-play society. Now that is perfectly okay if our country's name is Liechtenstein. But our country's name is not Liechtenstein or Luxembourg, it is India. And India has got enormous complexity in the kinds of problems, in the kinds of ways they can be solved, and this requires understanding the inside of the black box and innovating in new ways. So unless we invest in science and technology to solve our problems in our ways, we are not going to be a society which will actually go towards sustainable development. We will become a vassal state of technologies developed elsewhere and solutions developed elsewhere. But more fundamentally, they will be very expensive and untenable in our context. Now, technology again interplays with science and society in this aspect because today, the huge scale of Indian youth, and if we train them well, and that technology is becoming enormously cyber-physical, combining artificial intelligence, data, machine learning with the physical. This means there's an extraordinary opportunity for solutions in our society. And therefore, we must expand the footprint of critical thinking, in humanities, in philosophy, in logic, along with science and technology, to a large number of people. Today, 90% of our scientific investment in R&D go to places where 10% of our students go to. 90% of our students go to small colleges, state universities, and elsewhere, where research, only 10% of our research support goes to. So we must use the extraordinary benefits we have of research centers of excellence and connect them to a wider set so that critical thinking and the applications of research in agriculture, health, industry, and so on can take place. So then this becomes the combination of technological feasibility and solutions will go to scale, and India will become the solution provider, not just for India, but for the kinds of problems the whole world faces. Now, where do you fit in over there? Now, as Mr. Tripathi very nicely put it, all of us, of course, are interested in furthering our careers, our interests, and so on and so forth. But if we talk only about I, me, and myself, we are not looking at the common good. And unless we start, similar to the time we had at independence, of having a shared sense of purpose, not only about India, but as I said, we are the stewards of the planet, of the entire planet, we are going to be in trouble. We cannot be in a situation where we are focusing on making our robotic devices or our drones and starting our companies and forgetting, even for a moment, the huge challenges which are around us as we step outside. If you go outside in Delhi, you will short distance, you will see the huge Ghazipur waste dump, which is higher than the Qutub Minar, higher than the Taj Mahal, and that's a crying shame. Now, that's not a technological problem alone. It's a techno-economic social problem. So unless we look at the commons and change the tragedy of the commons and look at common problems such as waste, pollution, traffic, sustainable living, the ability of people to have access to resources, all of this is something which should become our interest. So no matter what we do as individuals, institutions, large organizations, we must keep in mind, as Mahatma Gandhi said, does what I do impact the poorest of the poor? And by the poorest of the poor, we mean not only poor individuals, but the way our society is, our commons are. So while we go ahead and drive the use of technology in multiple aspects, while we drive the successes of ourselves and our companies, we must also keep in mind that our profits, our successes must feed back into changing society and the planet in a sustainable manner. Thank you very much.